Hello everybody, I have some great news. Prices for classics are finally on the way down, making them more affordable for all of us. I'm going to be taking us through a few gems that you could buy right now. Some well-known classics, but also a few surprises. So first of all, for just under £8,000 you could have Fiat's mid-engine wonder, a car dating back to the 70s when Fiat weren't afraid to take risks. These are sharp looking little jewels and great fun to drive. I've reviewed one and will put links to all the reviews of most of the cars that are included here in a pinned comment for this video. Now just look at that amazing colour scheme. It's a 1987. I think it looks brilliant. It has a Targa top as well, which is, depending on your tastes, could be a good or bad thing, but just take a look at that sort of junior Ferrari interior as well. Looks absolutely wonderful, and these drive ever so well with the really willing little Fiat engines. Just under £8,000, 1987, in theory 32,000 miles. It says it's recently serviced and recommissioned by a Fiat specialist, new tyres and so on. Pistachio says that, as with all Italian cars of this era, the main thing you have to look out for is rust. But they are mechanically simple and would make a brilliant mid-engine classic. Perhaps though you want something a little bit more usable and actually even rarer. The Fiat Tipo 16 valve was one of the best hot hatches of the 90s. It handled really well. It had a fun, revvy 2-litre engine with 150 horsepower. I haven't reviewed one of these yet, so if you have one, please do get in touch. At just £6,500, this looks like amazing value. You won't see another one on the road. It's in the best colour, and although, as standard, they weren't the best looking cars around, this one, with the alloys and the body kit, is a little bit more attractive. They're also a really usable car, being the most spacious in their class. I love that very basic interior with the sports steering wheel, the bolstered cloth seats, and this one looks to be in really excellent condition. The engine bay is really clean. Let's see what it mentions. 90,000 miles, 12 months MOT, so it could be a good car to go for. Going back a few years again, do you remember the days when you could get a Fiat Dino Coupe, so the Ferrari engined one, for only a few £1,000s? Well, those days are long gone. They are now around the £50,000 mark. But the 124 Coupe, its junior brother, is almost as good looking and definitely within reach. Now, admittedly, this one is a little bit over budget, but maybe the seller is going to be open to some offers. Now, these cars look amazing. This one has the Chromadora alloys, which were the same as on the bigger Fiat Dino Coupe. Now, Pistachio just told me that the running gear is the same as on the excellent, much-loved 124 Spider. That means that part availability is very good. You get a willing, a revvy twin-cam engine and class-leading handling. In that red colour, it looks fantastic. In terms of mileage, 40,000, it's a 1971, and it looks like it's had plenty of money spent on it in the last few years. And if you buy one of these, you really wouldn't regret it. This comes from an era when Fiat used to make the best handling cars around. They're great fun to drive, they look brilliant, affordable to run. What's not to like? Let's move on to Alfas. The transaxle cars are some of the best handling ever made. After years in the doldrums, the 75 is now much in demand. Now, primarily the V6 Busso engined one, but the 2-litre twin cam with alloy heads is another brilliant engine. In this car here, it makes a healthy 150 horsepower and it's lighter, so it would actually handle better than the V6, and it still has an LSD, a limited slip diff. It's got a body kit which I think is original. The dealers were putting these on at the time. The alloys look all right. Perhaps the stance isn't 100% or it's on the original shocks, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And it has been owned by one owner for the last 11 years, during which time it's been restored and only used occasionally. Comes with an MOT until August 2025 as well. Suspension is polybushed. The car is wax oiled, it sounds like a great candidate and a good price at $8,250. All true Alfistas have a soft spot for the Spider. The very early cars are not within our reach, but for our budget we could buy a later model. This one is available in Germany for €9,000, the equivalent of £7,500, giving us plenty left over to do a road trip to go and collect it. It has passed the notoriously tough TUV, which is valid till April next year. So in theory, it should be in good fettle. It has the smaller 1.6 litre engine, but don't let that put you off, because it's actually revvier and smoother than the 2 litre. And after all, these cars aren't really about speed and power. Now our last Alfa, this time an Alfetta Saloon, so the same chassis as a 75, but a really different looking car. Despite the class-leading handling, these have never had the same cachet as BMW's 5 Series from the 70s and the 80s. As a result, very few have survived. Don't follow the BMW crowd and get something much more exclusive. This one looks properly menacing in dark metallic. It's based in Italy, but at €10,000, that gives you about $1,700 to get it back here. Just imagine driving it back through the Alps. This is a 2 litre with 130 horsepower. It's the Quadrifoglio Oro, so it has the upgraded interior, alloys, and the iconic wooden wheel and gear change. Now, like many of the other cars based in the European markets, the description is very short on detail, so you'd have to go and find out a little bit more before making the trip over. But on the face of it, this looks like a good car. We're going to go modern again for the first Maserati. This Ferrari engined monster is only £8,000. Now there isn't much information in this British advert either. Unfortunately, it's just generic stuff about the dealer himself and the specs of the car, and Pistachio says, in his experience, that's not a very good sign. And these cars can be very expensive to put right, so you'd want to get it properly checked out. A positive for me is that you can see the standard crossover pipe in the boot. This is good for 2 reasons. First, bypassing it is a really common mod that liberates the true glory of the Ferrari V8. And second, the fact that the original is being kept, I see as a pretty good thing. But these look incredible, they sound even better, and they have interiors that make you feel really special. We're now going to go more old school with the impossibly cool Biturbo. Now these have a terrible reputation. They were supposed to take on Jaguar, Mercedes and BMW, but poor reliability meant that they never achieved their full potential. Now most of their issues can be known and can be dealt with, but they always will be demanding cars to own. In return though, you will get a luxury car which is different to anything else out there. €10,900 is about £9,000, so that is comfortably under budget. It gives us a little bit left over to go and collect it from Italy. This one has the 2 litre Italian market engine rather than the 2.5, but it still comes with 200 horsepower of twin turbo punch and a handcrafted interior. Just take a look at those incredible plush Vela seats that you could absolutely just sink into. The wooden gear change, this one is a manual as well, which for me would definitely be a good thing. You have the very plush wood-covered dash. And here is another Italian salesman who thinks that detail is totally unnecessary. All he says is that the car is beautiful, works perfectly, and is powerful. Now that it works perfectly, in my experience, is extremely unlikely, but if you want something that's different and luxury on the cheap, then this is hard to beat. Moving on to Lancha now, the Monte Carlo was a mid-engined exotic that formed the basis for the last 2-wheel drive rally car to win the championship, the NR27. Now it's hard to find a nice one under £10,000 here, but this one in Spain looks really good. It's within budget and is in the best colour. Now these are really underrated cars. They use Lancha's version of the Fiat twin cam and they are absolutely brilliant to drive. This one is a Series 2, so it has the sorted brakes and other niceties. The seller says it has been repainted and certainly it looks great. It's also passed what he calls the technical inspection. I'm not sure what this is, but I'm assuming it's something similar to the MOT that we have here in the UK. Now, have you heard of the Lancha with the Ferrari engine? The Tima was a brilliant car in its own right, with tidy handling, a plush interior and decent refinement. But with the Germans producing big engine flagships, Lancha decided it needed something special to compete. This one is slightly over budget, but with an offer I'm sure you could get it for under 10k. You'd have to bring it back from Italy, but it would be worth it. This has the cross-plane crank version of the famous Ferrari V8 that was in the 328. It also has a handcrafted bespoke interior, an electric spoiler and adjustable suspension. All of this made it a true exotic. It has 170,000 kilometers, which is around 105,000 miles. It has been recommissioned, but has not been used for 8 years, so you'd expect to have to iron out a few niggles. You can see from this picture that the lacquer coat has gone, but that's something that could be remedied at a later stage. The rear spoiler also should not be up when stationary, so is probably not working. But generally the engines are pretty tough and not overly complex. It's the other bits, which are specific to the 832, that you have to watch out for. So that's bits of interior and some of the sort of exterior body trims that were just for those cars. The last car that we're going to look at, I am sure that you have never heard of, and yet I think it's one of the most elegant cars that has been ever made. As well as being beautiful, the Gamma Coupe is the last Lancha engined Lancha. Designed and assembled by Pininfarina, this has to be one of the world's most underrated cars. It was Lancia's flagship in the late 70s. It shared the excellent suspension from the Beta and had a unique flat-4 Lancha engine, which was only used on this particular car. It had 120 horsepower and it was really light and torquey, so perfect for its touring role. It really deserved to do better, but it was released before it was fully developed. It had a system whereby the power steering pump was run from the left camshaft. Now, if it was cold and the power steering fluid was too thick, it could cause that belt to jump on the camshaft with predictable consequences. This has now been rectified on most cars, but if you're going to buy one, you want to check that the different system has been implemented. This one, at €8,000, is a mere £6,600. The seller says that the body is generally sound, but the paint could do with a little bit of attention. On the plus side, the belt on the engine has just been done. You would, though, immediately have to get rid of that monstrosity of a towing hook. As you can see, he's licking my fingers out of pure love. It's not that I've been giving him treats to get him to come up and sit here with me. Cats. Anyway, he says that you absolutely must watch the actual reviews I've done on these cars, so I will put links to all of them in a pinned comment and the video description. Now, just a quick proviso before I go. I have no affiliation with any of these sellers. I just went online, had a look at adverts of cars that I found interesting. So I would never buy without an inspection, particularly the ones which are abroad. Having said that, these are all cars that I would love to own. So what are you waiting for? Go out and get yourself a wonderful Italian classic.